There we go. Had to start the recording.
It is 6:31 and I am calling to order the May 14th meeting of the Community Safety and Social Justice Committee. I'm going to go ahead and read the thing and go through the agenda. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted via remote means. Members of the public who wish to access the meeting may do so via Zoom or by telephone. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. So we will have the agenda review and announcements, review minutes, any member reports, public comment, Crescent DEI updates, Resident Oversight Board, Youth Empowerment Center, retreat planning, meeting with council, any other public comment, and then items not anticipated. So that is the agenda. So does anyone have any announcements?
Yeah, no announcements. I mean, can you all hear me? I was gonna say no announcements. So I'm assuming DI because they send their report, so they're not gonna be able to make it, right?
Correct, because I believe it's their present youth.
Yeah, the youth
Line.
workshop at 5 o'clock.
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
Okay.
I have their update.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Sounds good.
So the minutes in our packet, we have March minutes. And we have does anyone have any additions or subtractions they'd make to the minutes, or do we think we can approve them as submitted? Yes, Erica.
It's minor, but it's Emmanuel Lutheran Church, not Manuel. So I think that needs to be changed. And I'm trying to think if it's the March or the April minutes. I think it's the April minutes for the Commission on Disabilities. It says not versus now. It just changes the meaning of the sentence. So there's just some minor things, nothing major.
So if sorry, my dog is barking. If anyone has any other changes, otherwise I think we could approve those with the assumption that those would be made. And I don't know if maybe you want to email me the specifics about them and I can get that to Angel. So let's see. Vote, do we have a motion to approve March and April minutes? I got ahead of myself for a second. March and April minutes. Is there a motion to do so?
So
Motion
moved.
to approve the March and April minutes.
So I will take a quick roll call vote. Deborah?
Yes.
Lisette?
Yes.
Erica?
Yes.
Everald?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, so we have March and April approved. Member reports. Do we have any member reports?
Well, yeah, I'll just report on the fact that, throughout this month, it's been, besides our letters that went out, in support of making sure that CRESS and DEI did not get you know, their budgets, decreased. And we actually said that we wanted more of a budget. Besides that, it was, you know, contacting the town council. So I'm going to be talking about this now, and I'm going to be talking about it later, just to make sure that people understand how serious this is, that basically contacting town council, not hearing from them, you know, basically, you know, being ignored, you know, CSSJC is being ignored, and we're not being listened to, and the community is finding out about it. So basically, I've had to take the time, emailing the town council, trying to attend meetings, all of these things, so to send a message, right, that CREST, DI, and other, you know, departments and centers like the Youth Empowerment Center, things like that, that CSWG has recommended, CSSGC has stood behind, you know, it's just being ignored by the town. And so, you know, we're taking up all this time, all this energy. And Lynn, and I'll speak specifically to Lynn, who I've contacted again during this time in between, and just being ignored. So, but we'll talk more about it when the agenda items come up.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you for doing that. Thank you for reaching out. And there is, I know the Finance Committee is meeting tomorrow specifically about the public safety departments. I unfortunately was not able to attend the budget hearing on Monday. I did just send them an email as myself, just again advocating for CREST, because I guess in case people weren't aware, there are 2 responder positions that are going to be frozen in this budget cycle for the CREST responders. Those are currently vacant positions, but it's difficult to guess whether or not those would be reinstated if nothing is going to be improving with the revenue stream in town. One police officer position is also being frozen, as well as a fire department position, and I believe 2 positions in Department of Public Works. No, 1. Okay. And then is there a reduction somewhere else?
I believe the town, in total, there's 6 vacant positions that will not be filled. And then somewhere there's a part-time position in the town, I believe town staff.
So again, tomorrow is the specific Finance Committee hearing meeting on the CREST, fire, and police budgets. I am willing to just write a quick email either on my own behalf or as part of the group to say, you know, we are against these 2 positions being frozen. I mean, I think it could be quick and simple, but I think it would be helpful to send at least a message to the Finance Committee that we're paying attention and we are not in support of that choice. Yes, Deborah.
Yeah, and I totally agree that we should send something of this time, you know, to get it out there, because I won't be able, because what time is the budget meeting tomorrow?
I think it's 4 to 6. Is that right, Camille?
Yes, 4 to 6.
4 to 6. So we want to put it out there for people to attend it, right? So whoever can attend it, please do. And then I'll be sending out an email to my networks to make sure that people know about it, so they can attend, because I don't think I'll be able to attend because of already meetings that I have. So we should definitely send it out. But from what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, then that means CREST, which is the newest department that's been dealing with these critical issues, is suffering 2 frozen positions, whereas all these other departments that have a lot more people are having one position frozen. So again, sending clear message, right? That the most vulnerable amongst us, that CREST serves, which is the most vulnerable amongst us, is the department that's getting the frozen positions. And the fact that, you know, I've heard that the manager, the one that Kat Newman, the position that Kat Newman was in, that she's no longer, that she's leaving because I guess the funding would end in July. And
Yes.
that's another. So that's another position. So we need to talk about everything very clearly before this public comment so that the public understands what's happening here, which is basically, trying to demolish CREST program, which is the program, the pivotal program that CSWG was tasked and charged to create, and then obviously the other programs to be created too, the other departments. The critical department that CSWG was tasked to create, which CSWG recommended and the town created, which the town now is basically sending the message that they are demolishing it. And that's how we have to talk about it. They are trying to demolish it. And that is clear. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And during this time when everything is happening, right? That ICE is in town and everything else is in town. So the town is clearly sending the message that they don't care about all of the residents. Only the residents that have the money, only the residents that have the status, only the residents who have the wherewithal to get their needs met are the ones that they care about, right? And the rest that don't have that, they could care less. And I'm just going to say this right out front, right out loud, because that's who CREST assists, and the clear message has been sent. Well, like I said, we'll continue to talk about this throughout this meeting, because this is ridiculous.
Thank you, Deborah. And I guess just to kind of piggyback off that, I don't know specifically what has been going on in Amherst. I've seen more stuff happening in Holyoke, but again, seeing videos out of Worcester, seeing videos out of Chelsea, Bedford, like the way that ICE is operating in the communities, just kind of with impunity and violence towards families, out in broad daylight in public. I know that our town manager and departments have made, again, a reaffirming statement about not cooperating, but I would like to know that that's actually the case, that when push comes to shove, Amherst police aren't going to be assisting with immigration arrests. And I don't know what the status of that is right now, but I think that is something that I'd like to keep our group aware of and keep thinking about how to support the community if somebody has been disappeared by ICE, because they're leaving 12-year-old children alone, taking parents in front of them. It's just despicable. So that's
well, and to kind of add to that is just like, but people, even if, and I don't know, and maybe Errol might know more because I know, he kind of works more in that arena. I'm not sure what ICE has been in Amherst or not, but just the potential of it, right? Just the fear of it. Parents are not allowing the kids to go to field trips and different things for fear that they might get, what have you. Because remember, it's not just, families that are undocumented. It's families that are undocumented, families that have any type of different visa status, green card, and even if you're a citizen, if you look like me, you might get stalked and you might get harassed, and people are walking around with their passports in hand. It's just an atmosphere of fear. That's what is happening. If you look like me and others that look like us, we are in fear, period, point blank. I am in fear. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't matter what's your status. If you look like I look, you are walking in fear in this town, period. And so CREST is the place that you'd want to call. You don't want to call the police. Even if the town manager has said that, yes, we're going to not cooperate, I wouldn't trust it. I'm not going to trust it. I'm sorry. And so I wouldn't be calling the police. I wouldn't want to call the police. I'd be calling CREST. I'd be calling other places for assistance. That's the type of atmosphere we're living in right now. People that look like us, BIPOC people, people of color, people who are marginalized, immigrants. That's where we're living in right now. Period.
screen. I don't know if he has anything to add in terms of what is being seen around town from the immigration perspective.
Sorry, I froze a bit.
That's okay.
No, so I know that I haven't heard mass information that they're in Amherst or here in Western Mass. I know that I know I have a client who is still in ICE custody that was picked up in Amherst. I don't know if they've been back on a larger scale raid since that time. But one of the key things, I think to Deborah's earlier point and to yours, Allegra, is what is our policy, meaning town policy on law enforcement aiding ICE? So one of the things that we deal with in the courthouse is that I know under the first administration, the state had guidelines about, you know, how ICE can operate in state properties and state places. And one of the things that I know for a fact that court officers do not and cannot do is they cannot hold a person in custody because ICE has issued a detainer beyond what the detainer requires or allows. So it's, you know, if somebody gets arrested under due process, the officer, including Amherst PD, cannot and should not hold a person just because someone from ICE says, hey, we're coming to get that person. No, it is contrary to due process. But earlier on, and I haven't seen any statements changed or anything made differently, the town manager and the town council did commit to saying that our law enforcement will not aid in ICE raids or ICE detentions or things like that. It doesn't mean to say, and I think the governor actually shockingly said this a week ago, that we're not a sanctuary state. However, you know, there is no policy that says we're going to actively aid with immigration custom enforcement when it comes to our residents, our citizens. So it is a matter of whether or not there's a commitment locally, because that's where it matters the most. It is locally, because one of the things I'm learning with my client being in custody is that there is no, the playbook is not being followed. You cannot get any information on anyone, despite how many petitions you file, how many forms you filed, and follow the ICE protocol. You still do not get information on people in custody. And it is very unfortunate because, yes, they don't care about the families that get left behind, kids that are American citizens. And, you know, that is the real impact. It's like, you're not taking a person, you're separating, you're breaking up a family. And we need to have that commitment from the town to say, we understand if, you know, ICE has a detainer, and people should understand that those detainers should be something issued by an immigration judge to say, hey, this person, there's a warrant for this person, or there's an arrest warrant for this person, or signed by a magistrate to say, please detain this person. It should also specify a period of time, and ICE should reasonably give you a period of time when that person is going to be picked up. Again, as we've talked about in these meetings, unfortunately, they don't have to say where the person is going. And again, because it's federal, they don't have to keep the person local. I think people saw the news recently where in Newark, the mayor was arrested protesting the opening of the ICE detainer in Newark, where again, they're trying everything to, you know, just mass house people wherever they can. My person is in Rhode Island. It's not ridiculously far. And fortunately, they have not moved him yet. and keyword there being yet. So there is that, but it's terrifying. And unfortunately, I wish I had a better answer to say do this or do that. It's just that the things that people usually should do that we think is helpful to them is not being followed, is not being respected by this administration. And so it's one of those things where, again, one of the thing I deal with the most these days is literally just answering questions, even from naturalized citizens, as to can I travel, can I go here, can I do this? And at best, on 2 years ago, I would say absolutely. Live your life, go do this, go do that. But I fear that, just navigating the system myself, being frustrated, I'm troubled to just give people definitive advice because, quite frankly, they can rely on that to their detriment. Because just me navigating the system, following the normal protocol, I'm not getting the responses that I should be getting. And so it's hard for me to tell people, do this or do that. So it is one of those things where I would just tell people just to come up with a plan. Have a plan for you and your family. It's very scary to say, but that is literally right now the smartest thing you can do is have a plan for you and your family, just in case. And while you have that plan, your kids are going to be, as hard as it may sound, it's have your kids go to school. It's their everyday norm. It's what they know. It's what they're used to. It's what they should do. Kids can sense fear and danger and things that change in their parents, but to my understanding, ICE is not and should not be allowed in schools, and that is not just town policy. I think it's a matter of state policy.
Yeah, but April, as you know, they're not following protocol, and they have said that they will show up in all of these places that before they wouldn't normally do, right? Those are some of the executive orders that the Trump administration has put out there. And like you said, I mean, obviously we still need to live our lives and things like that. But as you stated, we need to have a plan. And for me, though, I wouldn't rely. I'm sorry, I'm not going to rely on the town. I'm not going to rely on the police and police force to say that just because the town manager said XYZ. Because listen, we're CSSJC members. We're professionals. We're on this group and we've been asking them questions. We've been asking for meetings, and we've been ignored. So now I'm supposed to believe that the town and the police and so on and so forth is going to be actually their word and actually protect people when they're at their most vulnerable, which is possibly being separated from their family. No, I'm not going to rely on that. And that's why for me, it's more so about relying on, the places that I know will be helpful, which would be press and DI and other departments, which are the departments that CSWG recommended that be put in place. Those are the places that I'm going to rely on. I'm not going to rely on the town manager or the town council or any of the police department to be holding true to whatever it is that they've said they're going to do. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that.
I also want to emphasize too, one of the larger questions that that I've been answering is the question of deportability versus inadmissibility. So if you're here in the country, any immigration to remove you is considered deportability. If you're out of the country and this came up with a consultation I had with a naturalized citizen. So when it comes to travel, and I think that's important because we've seen where green card holders are targeted for minor things. So it should be important for people to understand that as a green card holder, you're not automatically deportable. There are certain things that you can do, and that is based on when your green card was issued, meaning how long have you had your green card. There are certain things that makes you deportable, and some things that do not make you deportable. However, even if the charge that you may or may not have had does not make you deportable, if you travel and you try to come back, it may make you inadmissible and therefore prevent you from coming back in the country. So it is important for people to understand the difference and to look into that. I know I've had people reach out to say, I'm planning a cruise, I'm going to these ports, and at some point I'm going to have to come back. So again, very, very important for travel, people who are traveling. It's be mindful of, you may call an attorney and you may give them information to say, hey, I had this charge. Can it make me deportable? They may say no, and that information is accurate. But the analysis doesn't just end there. You have to ask about what happens when I try to come back. Okay, so be very, very mindful of that as well.
And to add to that, like even, in terms of, and this is all public information, like, right, at the university and at other universities, they were revoking statuses, right, visas and things like that, students, and, and for not even giving a reason, right? And it's really figuring out even as to why. So what Everett is saying, that's the thing that you have to kind of think through and think about, especially if you end up traveling out, is whether you'd be admitted back in, or that kind of difference, right, between admissibility or even deportability. Because deportability, they're also deporting based on First Amendment, right, expressions, right? So if you said something or took part in, right, protests, things like that, your First Amendment. So First Amendment has no strength anymore, right? Depending on your status here in the United States, or if you travel and come back in, they could end up not admitting you, right? Like if you travel, because we've heard of people being detained or questioned, right, when they come into, let's say, Boston, Logan, and things like that. So those are questions and things that everyone needs to think about. Like even for instance, here at UMass, so we always do with the Cape Verdean Student Alliance, we always take students to do a community service trip to Cape Verde, right? But this year we've canceled that trip, right? Because again, based on what April said, this is an example. Because if we take the students, we don't know if we're going to be able to, some of them would be able to come back in, right? Not because they did anything wrong, none of them have, but just because they did everything right. But we don't know. They're changing, the ground is always changing, right? The reasons as to why they're either deporting or not admitting people is fast-paced and changing. We don't know. So that's where you have to really make those decisions. And so for myself and other staff members who would accompany the students, we have to make that decision that no, we're not going to do that, even though of course it's a sad decision to have to make, because not only are you impacting the country there that we do always do the community service, but also the students, right? We're going to learn and going to take part in that, and some of them who are seniors will not be able to have that opportunity again, right? So, but yeah, those are the types of decisions that right now, given everything that's happening, that every person needs to engage in that thought process and make those decisions.
To think about.
Hi, sorry. I have a question. I don't know if anyone here knows, but do they, how like police have marked cruisers? Do they have any sort of marked vehicles or like federal license plates anywhere that they can be identified?
So I think there are certain,
And vehicles that are marked with either ICE or, what's the one that, the Border Patrol ones, but I've seen vehicles in Holyoke that were unmarked, no license plate. They were usually like Ford Explorer type, you know, kind of like in the typical vein of what a police cruiser looks like. But I mean, there used to be, when I worked in Boston, there was a vehicle that was regularly outside one of the courts there that was just like a minivan, and it was unmarked. And we saw them take down people on their way into the courthouse numerous times. So I think that's, so that, I think last time I'd given the number for the hotline, and that's one thing that they try and verify is if people think that there's a vehicle that looks suspicious or looks like there might be some sort of ICE activity, they can try and describe it. And so when alerts are going out, when something has been verified, it will say like silver unmarked Ford Explorer on this block in Waltham, or, you know, just thinking of an example, but
Yeah.
Just think of it as any law enforcement vehicle. I mean, some are marked, some are not marked, so we shouldn't rely on that they'll be identified or marked. I mean, think about the girl who got kidnapped at Tufts. And I say kidnapped because, you know, like people rolled up on her, no identification, no markings.
With
So
masks on, or they had like
yeah,
half of their faces showing.
yeah. On any other day, we would think, oh, she's been kidnapped. Yeah.
Right.
And unfortunately, even just what the officers are wearing isn't necessarily identifying them. And I think there was a video in Waltham, and the guy has the mask up like this, and it was a city councilor who happened to be like on the street and was videoing what was going on and asking, you know, please identify yourself. What agency are you with? And he wouldn't. And so, you know, I think that level of just, you know, we're not following the rules, we're not following the playbook. You asked for a warrant, I'm not going to give you one, and we can do what we want, is what's really, you know, even though it's still important to have the know your rights training and get that information out to people,
Right.
they're clearly not necessarily abiding by those rights.
So-
Which is really scary.
So I know that, and I know we're getting sidetracked, but I think this is important.
Mhm.
Not everyone watches the news, but one of the key things that people should, and I know a lot of them happens, pay attention to, is all these lawsuits that get filed in different courts about somebody was detained and is going before a federal judge. Because, and I don't want to use the word fighting back, but a lot of the lawsuits that have been filed on behalf of people being unlawfully detained have been found in favor of the person unlawfully detained. So the courts are doing their job properly to say, no, this is not okay. And, you know, release these people, or this person cannot be moved from Massachusetts, Louisiana, or whatever. So there's always bits and pieces of information out there. And so it's one, unfortunately, because they're being filed in so many different jurisdictions in different courts, there isn't really one you can say, well, this is not policy. No, it's not one of the one size fits all. It may just be applicable to this person or that, unfortunately. However, it does add, you know, to a person's argument to make, to say, hey, this court have found this or ruled this, and therefore what you're doing, you know, is in direct violation of that. But there's a lot of cases that are coming up. It's now at the Supreme Court. I mean, we're in May. We usually get decisions like around June on key issues. I think birthright citizenship is about to be heard. I think it's either this week or next week. That is a very important one to pay attention to. And, you know, I'm sure it's going to be, whatever the decision is, it's going to be plastered in every news media once it comes down. But again, people should be very, you know, just part of know your rights is look at these big cases to say, this is what the courts have ruled. And that way you have an argument when people just stop you and try to question you, and without even identifying themselves. And again, there is no obligation. If a person stops you, won't identify themselves, you are not obligated to stop and talk to this person or answer any questions. Yeah. So and that's very important for people to remember and understand. If somebody walks up to you, doesn't identify themselves, just start asking you questions, walk away. Yeah. You have no obligation you didn't break any laws, you didn't do anything. It's just like you would deal with a police officer. It's, again, we're fortunate where most of our police officers are in uniform, so it's a police officer. But again, you've broken the law, this person won't identify themselves, just start asking you questions. You are not obligated to stand there and answer any questions. Mhm.
Thank you all for providing your insight and coming with good questions and good things to kind of keep on the horizon for us. So I think if nobody else has any reports, I think we can move on to public comment. Okay. Oh, hello. You're way ahead of me, and I accidentally raised my own hand.
So, hi, I'm Martha Hanner in District 5. Speaking as an individual, I would like to go back to tomorrow's Finance Committee meeting and the state of the risks to CRESS. First of all, Everald, I don't know whether it's all possible for you, but if you could say just 2 or 3 sentences from what you've said in these past 10 minutes about the risk to people, just as that much more emphasis of why CRESS is needed so that people can call somebody other than the police. We've said that, but it needs to be emphasized again and again. And then to go on, the biggest concern is that Paul did not fund the implementation manager. The excuse was it was on a grant. And so it wasn't even mentioned in the budget review. CRESS lost 2 responders. They never mentioned that CRESS lost their, #1 assistant for Camille here. It was like telling Paul Bockelman, oh yes, we love your management of the town, but we're going to take away Angela Mills, And I think this is really wrong. My little three minutes worth or something, I again will emphasize the importance of that. But as many people that could possibly speak up in some way tomorrow, I think it's very important. I've tried to talk to some of the individual finance committee members and 2 or 3 of them, and they feel that, CRESS is being underutilized and really want to have a review of the CRESS program. They say they support it still, and it's not that they want to, do away with it, but they say it needs a review, and there's going to be the Donahue Institute that does that. I think that's for the future for us to discuss. But the crucial thing right now is to make sure CRESS has enough funding to continue this very year and for us to all stress how important their work is at the present time and the impact that CRESS has. So I just urge everybody to speak up, and Everald, particularly if you were at all possibly available at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon to log in and say something. I think you command a lot of respect because of your background for that. So thank you all, and maybe I'll hear from some of you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Someday, not today, I will learn Zoom. Did any of that happen? Did you hear any of what I said, or did I mute myself the whole time? I muted myself the whole time. Nobody else raised their hand, so we can move on, is what I said. So I know Philip had sent along a report about what DEI has been up to. I don't know if we want to bring that up, or if Camille, you want to quickly go over it.
I actually have it brought up.
Oh, look at
So
you.
I am getting better with Zoom. So DEI update to CSSJC. The DEI department is nearing completion of the departmental trainings across all town departments. In collaboration with consultants, finalized draft bylaws for the resident oversight boards have been completed. The documents have been submitted to the town manager and is currently awaiting next steps. Outreach for the liberatory visioning process with Dr. Love has concluded. The DEI department is now working with Dr. Love on developing a final report. We are seeking authorization to apply for a community heart and soul grant to continue this work once the final report is completed. In partnership with Citizens for Juvenile Justice and CRESS, the DEI department is hosting a youth empowerment program on May 14th. It's going on now from 5 to 7, focusing on the school to prison pipeline. The department participated in the sustainability fair on May 10th, last Saturday. The department is actively involved in the town's hazardous implementation planning group, contributing to emergency preparedness and safety planning. The department is collaborating with consultants to develop an annual report and strategic plan to guide future initiatives and operations. And upcoming events, in June, we will be having our quarterly 413 DEI Connect meeting. June 2nd is the Pride flag raising ceremony outside Town Hall at 5:30 p.m. On June 8th, Human Rights Commission Youth Hero Awards will be held in partnership with the Race Amnesty Day at Mill River at 12 p.m. Nominations are now open through May 23rd and can be submitted via the HRC website. On June 22nd, Amherst Pride Parade. The parade begins at Amherst High School at 12 p.m., ending at the Town Common. A rally and resource fair will follow on the Common until 3 p.m. And that's it for DEI.
Camille, do you have any idea if people RSVP'd or were attending the event today? I know the first one they ended up canceling, so.
Yes, when I left today, there were half a dozen young people that were coming in.
That's great.
Yeah, so yeah, I had been in touch with Philip because Philip had outreached to get like different people that he could kind of talk to. So I had sent him members of the community that work with young people, and so he was like contacting them. And then I had outreach to my son and his friends, but unfortunately they ended up having like a track meet and it's senior night tonight at high school. So then they had to go to that, so they weren't able to go. But me and him were in communication all the way up to the start of the workshop. So at that point, he said there were already about 7 young people there. But I think he was expecting about, like, without the ones, like without my son and his friends, about 12.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So
I was at a conference today, and one of the speakers is a person who had put together a film about racial injustice in the Department of Corrections, but he also does a lot of youth outreach. So I was like, that was in my mind today. And perhaps something down the road.
yeah, I mean, I think like the names that I gave to Philip and Pamela in terms of outreaching and everything, there's some people there that really do a lot of extensive youth development work. I think it would be a good idea for them to outreach to some of those folks and really kind of create a relationship with them, because those folks could really provide some coaching, some things like that. Because like even me, I've worked with youth for many, many years, but I would not say I'm a youth development expert. I wouldn't, So you need people that actually do youth development work, youth leadership work, right? And they really have that kind of wherewithal in terms of how to work with young people, how to attract young people to events, how to really focus on things that young people want to actually deal with, And I know that we did a survey, so on and so forth, but there's other aspects that are very much connected with working with young people, which are very specific and very tailored, you know, to that population, right? And especially if we're trying to also attract really, right, the most marginalized, BIPOC youth, all of those young people that really need, you know, these types of, you know, information and access and things like that. You have to. So I'm just kind of saying it out there because I did send them some things, but there's several people that I have in mind that really the town should be working with to kind of, you know, do more to really connect, because what we want to do is connect and build a relationship with these young people, especially since, you know, the town, and I'll continue to say, is ignoring us around the youth empowerment center. They don't want to create a center for the young people. Then during this time, it's about really how can we connect with young people through this programming, which is difficult if you don't have a space for them to really gather, space that they feel is their own, right? Space where they feel comfortable to go to and things like that. It creates, it's a huge barrier.
Anybody else have any comments around?
DEI update.
Shall we move along to Cress?
Okay, let's see if I can make this work. Okay. So this is the Cress report for today. So the first slide I have is showing January 2025. These are our total number of interactions, which was 199. And as you can see, this also was put into the newsletter last month. And this month we have some of them. And as you can see, like February, it was up 114% the amount of interactions. We have the collaborations with social service agencies, with local businesses, our resources that we've distributed, and the number of walk-ins that we've had. March, the total recorded interactions with neighbors went up 896, which was 110% increase. And the large increase of interactions and resources distributed can be attributed to the drinking event on March 8th, which we're involved in. We also had the social service agencies, local businesses, and of course, there were a lot of resources that we distributed. There were 17 calls from walk-ins. And then April, it went down, of course, because of, it's still around maintaining the same 296 interactions with neighbors, collaboration with social service agencies, local businesses went up dramatically, and resources distributed and walk-ins to Cress. So here we have what has Cress been up to. This is for the month of March. There were 72 calls for service. Assist Neighbor was 22%, 22, which is 30% of our calls. 9 calls for Assist Business. Outreach was 4. Transport, we had 14 transportation calls. This is mainly due to the fact that the senior center has not had a driver, and Cress has been attempting to fill in for our seniors who are unable to get to their appointments, et cetera, that the van driver was trying to do. Well-being checks, 10. Follow-up 6, and then there were 3 assists to AFD or APD, and 4 engagements. For the month of April, it was 57 calls for service. Let me move this over. 40% of the calls made up Assist Neighbor, 4 calls for Assist Business, 13 transports, 3 well-being checks, 4 follow-ups, and there were 10 engagements. So this is 2025 so far, and this is talking about the total recorded interactions with neighbors. And the main thing about this is these are recorded interactions. So if folks just stop by to say hello, don't have a particular need, or just want to come speak to us, we don't have those interactions recorded here. This is just strictly people that we've actually had CADs made for. And again, a large increase was because of the drinking event on March 8th. So if you look at this now, this is September through December 2024. And if you look at the number of interactions with neighbors, so we had a 61.5% increase. Also because of the drinking event, but also because we've been getting out more and doing more in the community. So the collaboration with social service agencies, 35, local businesses, 18, resources distributed, 711, and that's also due to the Crest Connections and our newsletter. And 88 neighbors walked into the Crest office. So this is the comparison again for the two 4-month periods, and this is just a bar graph that shows where we are. And this is showing, let me see, I don't know if you see my thing here, the population served, because there has been question about who we are serving. And as you can see, a majority of the people that we are now serving is represents a lot of Amherst, which is a lot of seniors 60 plus and adults. So this is our call data for FY24. And then also it's talking about our Microsoft form. So this is this is up until now, 5/13/2025. So this actually it's FY25, which was 11/6/24 until 6/30/25. Oh no, excuse me. I'm a little messed up here. So there's this distinction between the calls for service and CADs made, as CADs only began in 12/18/23, and FY24 runs from 7/1/23 to 6/30/24. And Crest has been receiving and initiating calls for service since September 2022. Also, the term mental health can refer to either a CAD call type or a distinction responders mark on the Microsoft form. From 11/6/23 until 6/30/24, responders mark 54 calls as perceived mental health, with 10 dedicated Crest mental health CAD calls. Oh, currently we are working on the EAP survey, which is the Equitable Approaches to Public Safety. So this is the program that's funded within the Division of Violence and Injury Prevention. Its goal is to work with municipalities to develop and implement comprehensive public safety reform using public safety reform partnerships and broad stakeholder involvement. I've also included the link. So responders have been distributing paper surveys and a QR code that will go through the end of this month. It's available in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Haitian Creole. And if people would like to participate, they can contact me at my email, theriacc@amherstmass.gov. Also, I want to mention now that in April, we launched Crest Connections, and this initiative is to inspire students through reading and hands-on activities. It creates a fun, engaging environment where students can develop a love for books while building meaningful connections with community responders, and is a part of our public safety community engagement. And this is all from the EAPS grant. So for the first book, it was My Pet Slime, and the activity was slime making, and 18 youth were engaged in this. Here you see the book, The Wild Robot. And what the youth did is they made robots. And for this one, there were 27 students that were involved in this. And actually, we had to tell the teachers to stop sending people because there were so many kids that wanted to come and do these activities. So some of the feedback was, thank you, thank you, thank you. The town came through for me and my family for the first time ever. This was a neighbor that we had helped. And from the school, this is the first time I've ever seen the kids sit this still, actively listening to a book. Also, our newsletter, it's published monthly, and we distribute it in person to 30 locations, the Amherst Survival Center, Hitchcock Center, the Bridge Center, and CSO, Craig Stores, etc. We have a direct link to the newsletter, and if you go on the town website, when you click on CRESS, our tab at the top, it will take you to our page, and if you click on the newsletter, it will take you right to the updated newsletter of the month. There are also links for the past ones. We also have a sign up, which is here. And if anyone else wants one, they can just email me and I can add you to the list. For trainings, we've had Monica Bellucci, who's a licensed mental health counselor, who's been working with us on situational awareness. And Sarah Shefflin, who is a licensed independent clinical social worker, who is teaching us and going over one of our main modalities, which is motivational interviewing. MMMP, which is the Morning Mentoring Movement Program. We have one responder who's been engaging with the youth at the high school 3 days a week. And tomorrow is the town budget review meeting, public safety. It's going to be presented from 4 to 6. It's on Zoom. See the town website for the Zoom link. Questions?
So I guess I have a question. So right now, how many responders are there actually?
We have 5.
So 5 responders.
Yes.
And Newman is stepping down. As of when?
No, her position is grant funded.
Mhm.
And the grant for EAPS will end as of July 1st. And that her position is part of that grant.
So her position's basically going away and
Yes.
it won't be refunded.
No, not unless we get the grant again. And at this point right now, with the current political situation, it doesn't look like we are going to get the grant again.
So basically it'll be you without, well, with Kat obviously kind of almost serving as an assistant,
Yes.
director role type of thing, and then it would just be you and then 5 responders and that would
And our administrative assistant.
okay, and you have an administrative assistant.
Mhm.
Exactly.
So we will have one position open for a responder.
Mhm.
Did you apply for the grant?
The grant was a rolling grant, and the issue is that it is not being funded. So we already are put in for the grant, but at current time, we were told by our partner at the DMH, Department of Mental Health, that right now that the governor has not put it into the budget. So there are local representatives are fighting to get the funding restored. And I think at this point now, they had put $100,000 into a line item for the grant.
So a lot of what I do ties to the state budget, so I do pay attention, and so I think, I don't know if you get updates but from your contact, but with each committee that the budget moves through, I think sometimes things change. Is it still the position as of today that it may still not get funded, or do you know if it maybe has it been added back and still up for debate?
As far as I know, it's still not added, the additional funds. What was put into the budget was $100,000, which is not near enough. At present time, there are 6 communities that are funded through this grant.
With the same $100,000, or
That's what I'm assuming.
and do we know of any other grants, maybe from, not tied to a state budget or a government budget rather, that
We've been actively looking for grants, but again, that is part of the grant. I mean, the implementation manager's role is to look for additional grants.
does this person have grant writing experience?
She does write some of the grants.
Okay.
So we also, look for grants and does some of the grants. And then there are also some other people that have helped us. And I will say this, that the EAPS, our EAPS partners have been helping us try to seek other grants. Also, Trury Research has been working with us. And right now they are the ones that are in the process of doing the surveys, et cetera, to find out how effective the grant has been for the communities.
So if I can just turn in the just leaving the ground for a second. In the report that you presented just now, there are a couple calls in there that says this APD and AFD. Can you
Yes.
articulate what those are about?
A couple of times there were calls. So one of the calls was for folks that had gone through a fire and needed some assistance. For APD, there was a call where a family member had, I think at this point, the family member had passed and they needed another family member needed transportation to get to the hospital. And so Crest provided the transportation for this person and also was there to de-escalate and be able to be there to listen to them and provide comfort.
Last month, in last month's meeting, it could have been the one before as well. I think, if I remember correctly, the town manager was going to present to the town council the Crest's progress. And I think I'd ask if you were going to be part of that presentation or provide any talking points to the town manager. Can you talk about that, see if that happened and how did that go?
I provide for the monthly report for the town manager. I give him information and updates of what Crest has been up to. So for example, for this past month, I spoke of Crest Connections and the positive impact that it has had on the youth. I also spoke on the newsletter, MMMP, same things that I have put in this presentation. Also spoke about the uptick in the mental health calls that we've gone to. And trying to think of some of the other stuff. But everything that I had spoken to him of was in there. Oops. I'm trying to pull up my emails.
That's okay. So one of the things that I understand budget constraints and everyone trying to balance a budget. So I'm not completely not mindful of that. I mean, as I said a few moments ago, a lot of what I do is tied to the state budget, and we're advocating for more funding for certain things. But my concern is that from the data that you just presented, you know, Cress is anyone outside looking in, not understanding what the mandate was or is, which is an alternative to policing. Looking at this information would suggest that Cress is a social services group. And within that realm and within that context, I can see how it is easy for the town council to just look at this based on that information and data and to say, oh, we don't need these two additional people, or we don't, you know, or this is, oh, the police is fine. You know, the police is doing all the work. Cress is not taking any calls from the police. So I'm just worried, and while I'm worried, as a director of Cress, I'm just going to ask you, and it's okay if you need time to think about it. I mean, is Cress really focused on the right thing that puts it on the town to say, hey, the original charge of Cress was to be an alternative policing, and they're doing that, and as a result, here's, you know, there's a compelling evidence, compelling reasons for us to keep funding this department, or, you know, I'm just a little bit concerned that in the status quo as is, they may look at it and be like, oh, they're helping doing these things. And quite frankly, from a budget perspective, that's not really a priority for the town. I'm a little bit concerned and worried about the optics based on the data that's, you know, that we've seen and that we're looking at and that we've talked about month after month. So I don't know if there's any opportunities for us. And I know our retreat is coming up, and that's one of the things I wanted to discuss at the retreat is how can we as a committee help bolster Cress to be viewed by the town differently? Because I'm genuinely concerned that part of the reason why the committee not the committee, rather the town council. It's easy for people to say no to things when they think it is a certain thing when actually we're trying for it to be, you know. So I'm just a little bit concerned if we're giving them ammunition for them to just treat it as a social services group where it shouldn't be.
Okay, so I'm going to answer that question. So here's the thing you have to understand, that police and fire also, if you put it in that vein, are also social services because we provide a service. So the difference is, the key points is that the task of Cress was to fill in the gaps, okay? And what we're doing is we are intercepting the frequency of calls to the police. So instead of, we have a neighbor who would call the police multiple times a day with this or that, and also has some mental health concerns. And instead of calling or going to the police, they call or come to us. So those are the type of calls that we get. Also, we have an elder who, as I spoke before, who was being evicted, and Cress was able to go with the inspections department to this person's apartment and was able to bridge between them, inspections, and their landlord, the management company. Also were able to help them to, help them to give them the autonomy to be able to speak to the court, to be part of to support them for mediation so that they no longer had to deal with the police. Now, this person also has had some very negative interactions with the police. And would not open their door, etc. And now, because of the relationship that they have with the Crest responders, is able to go to mediation and was able to accept the help of others so that their apartment is no longer condemned. They are living back in their home. They were also able to get help from the court system. There's somebody that you have to go to court first before they allow this program to help them to clean up their apartment. So they were able to get that. So the thing is to differentiate between a police call and a Crest call. So what's happening is that people are not calling the police, they are calling Crest instead. If they're
Yeah.
having difficulty, if they're having mental health. We're also very much working with other departments. So there has been talk about how the police work with Morning, MMMP, Rec works with MMP. We also will collaborate with inspections. We collaborate with other businesses. So businesses will call us directly and to move people along. Craig's Stores, rather than call the police to have someone that is there that they no longer want there, will call Crest. And Crest will go out, mediate, help the person to find out what it is that they have their needs for, and help them to actually be there to listen to what their concerns are so that they can move to their next place peacefully. And this is the same thing that is happening with businesses. It's the same thing that's happening with library. There is no longer the need to call the police to move these people that along for them. So these are all the types of calls that would normally go to the police that are no longer going to the police. Also, the same thing with we have people, like I said, that would call the police multiple times a day. We have a neighbor who we've helped out who would call the police because they did not want maintenance to come to their apartment. And instead, Crest was there to be a liaison between their maintenance people so that they didn't have a fear of having the police called on them. So there's a lot of work that we're doing. We're addressing other needs. And it's not that we're a social service agency. It's that as public safety, we are all part of the social service process. It's just that we have more connections to help people. And in building these connections with businesses, the town, and our neighbors.
So I'll make this final point and ask one final question before and to stop hogging the mic. So I think everything that you've said just now is actually very brilliant and actually is the point. But the question is, though, I mean, I think there's an up here that, you know, you're assisting all these other departments within the town. Have you capitalized on that, or can you capitalize on that to say, you know, I mean, draft a petition and have all these other departments sign it to say, hey, here is our support for Crest because Crest has been doing all these things that has been benefiting us. Is there an opportunity for that? And I think that could bolster an argument as to why Crest should be fully funded.
I think what's happening now is one of the times that I went off screen was I received a call from an agency that's going to be at the meeting tomorrow in support of Crest because we have done a lot of work with them. So I think that definitely with the newsletter and all that's been going on and the amount of emails and people speaking up in the meetings, that people are really coming out now in support of Crest and understanding more of what it is we do. And when and I think that's also part of the surveys, because the surveys will show, here's what we're doing. And again, this is all through a researcher that's doing this. And the other part I know that's going to come up is the difference in the original mission. And also one of the things is, what is it that the EAPS grant, the Equitable Approaches to Public Safety, part of that grant is that we had to work within the community to bolster the BIPOC. And that's part of our youth initiatives. Those are all part of the grant. And the main thing with the grant is that the grant is not to take care of everything. The idea behind the grant is to bolster what we're doing, and then for the cities and towns to help make it sustainable. So what we're trying to do is take everything that we've done thus far, and to make it sustainable for the future.
Well, are you all set?
I am. I know you guys have been handed for a while, so I'll stop right here.
Oh, that's fine. Obviously, you can circle back again if we don't ask some of the questions that you need answered, because this is important, especially since, you know, the town is taking these actions. And I think, Camille, I think, you know, that's the thing that with us right here in CSSJC, and especially me being an original member of CSWG, what we're saying is, like, we just want to position CRES in the best way possible for because and you've seen it. I mean, council and other members of the Amherst community, they've always been resistant to CRES. They didn't want CRES to be created. They only did it, really, let's be real, because of what was happening on the national scene and the murder of Floyd, and a lot of the guiltiness of people at the time as to why, you know, the town of Amherst said, okay, we are actually going to deal with, you know, with our racist structures and our institutional racism that we have in town government. And that was then, right? That was in 2020. Now we're fast track 2025, and people have all rolled back. And we're seeing that, right? We're seeing that with these major corporations, everyone who said that they were going to be doing all these things for diversity, equity, inclusion, push comes to shove, right? Which is the bottom line, and everyone is rolling things back. And so town of Amherst is following suit. The same thing that others have done. They're positioning themselves and have been positioning themselves to do the same thing, right? Which is roll back, roll back, roll back. And that's what's happening here. And so for us, what we want is to fortify CRES as much as possible to withstand the attacks that have been coming and are more so at our doorstep, right? When they're freezing two positions, and then another position is ending because it was part of a grant, and obviously because of the budget crisis right now, because of the Trump administration, most likely that position is not going to be refunded. Then that means literally that you are down 3 positions, right? When at the end of the day. So with that being said, I mean, I understand, and that's why we're asking it not to put anything down on CRES. I think you all have done magnificently, given what the cards that you've been dealt with, right? And the things that you all have had to deal with. But that's why we bring it up, right? The resistance, and really on the police department side and on the town side, in terms of dispatch, not dispatching calls to you all, on you all not being able to take on all of the other matters that are non-violent that CRES could actually be taking on, but they're not. So they've actually been sabotaging you all along as to why. I do get it that, of course, you have taken on other calls that the police would have gone, but you could have taken on a lot more calls if that sabotage from the police and the town hadn't been cared. And I can say this, I know you might not be able to say it, but guess what? I can say it, and I'm going to say it, right? Which is what's occurring. So that then it becomes a fait accompli, right? That then the town council, like what Martha, one of the folks that spoke to there earlier, public comment, who's talking to the town council, oh, well, they haven't been really, you know, working up to par and things like that. Yeah, why? Why? Because the police and department and others in town and in the town are not utilizing you all to the full capacity. And I know that you all could utilize more and everything. So it's kind of like sabotage so that then there's a reason for them to freeze the positions. I mean, again, we're not idiots. We see it. We see the playbook. We see what's happening. And so that's why I'm calling it out. Because the point of the matter is that you all could be utilized a lot more, and that's not happening. And the other part that we've said too, right? If you all were being fully utilized to the full potential, the other part too is that, and we've talked about it, if you all had some hours, even in the evening, right, to be able to take on some of those calls that we know a lot of times happens later at night when people are more in crisis. A lot of things happen in the evening. And that opportunity hasn't even been given to you all. So all I'm saying is that I'm calling it out and I'm naming it. You know what I'm saying? I'm naming some of the things because you all are well equipped and have the wherewithal, right? The training, the everything else. And we're seeing it based on everything that you're saying, that people are utilizing you. But I think what's happening is that the town and the police are not allowing you all to be utilized because, again, the police department, they're afraid, right? They're afraid that if you are utilized more than as what we predicted, which is what we wanted, then there would be less use for the police, which is why you all are an alternative to police. I'm sorry, but that's why we created you all, to be an alternative to police, because the police are intimidating and to our townspeople, especially those that are BIPOC or those that are most marginalized. So I'm just putting it out there, and I'm saying I don't even, you don't have to respond to it. But the question that I do have though is around, so we've been hearing this question around the Donahue Institute doing a review of CREST. I'm just like, what is that about?
Part of the town managers, I don't know if it's a mandate, was that to do an evaluation of CREST, an independent evaluation. And I'm not sure where that is. I do know that there are people in town hall that are working to figure that out. But I do know.
Yeah, but my question is, when CSWG, when we were creating CREST, we had hired LEAP as consultants to do work initially to really kind of like look at what was the need in terms of like CREST and things like that. So why wouldn't they hire LEAP, which is an organization that's tried and true, that actually has this type of experience? Why would they hire the Donahue Institute, which again is a white institute? And
I was going to say as far as I know, they have not hired anyone at this point.
Yeah, but we've been hearing the conversations that it's Donahue that they're going to be hiring.
That is not what I was going to say. That is not what I've heard. So,
well, I'm just letting you know that those are the rumors.
Okay.
Those are the rumors out there, that the Donahue Institute is going to be hired to do this review. So again, I'm putting it out there, right, that the Donahue Institute should not be hired to do a review of CREST, that LEAP, which is a tried and true consulting organization that has the expertise in law enforcement, that did the first, that consulted with CSWG, that is why we came up with these recommendations that we think are very much in line with our charge, which was to create a program, a department that is an alternative to policing. They should be the ones to be hired if there's any type of review, because they already have a history with the town. They've already done a lot of the work previously. So why wouldn't you hire LEAP? It makes zero sense. And again, but it goes in line, right? So if they hire Donahue or any other outfit to come in to do this review, it goes again in line with what they are doing, which again, like I said, I can say it, which is sabotaging CREST and sabotaging the CSWG's recommendations.
I was going to say, I know I read the LEAP report, but I didn't know that they were hired as a consultant to do this. So that's news to me. I'll have to look into that. Okay.
And they would be the ones, they already have the history. They're very succinct. They have the expertise. They would be the ones to, if there's going to be anyone that would do a review, it would be them. I don't even know why it would make sense to bring in Donahue Institute or any other outfit when we already have work that was done by them. They were consultants with CSWG.
Okay, I'll look into that.
Thank you.
That's,
I'm done. Allegra?
So I kind of wanted to piggyback off of what Everald had said, because I understand the concerns that he brings about the mindset of people in town who are already like looking for reasons to dig into Cress a little bit. And I think that you framed things really well. And I think sometimes thinking about the reframe of, okay, well, you're just providing transportation, but if you're providing transportation to an elderly resident who otherwise might have turned into a medical call, because if they didn't get to their appointment or didn't get to their prescription, if they were diabetic, for example, and didn't have their insulin, that could have turned into an emergency, right? And by providing that preventative care, although it might not seem like a public safety scenario, it is something that a public safety department might have been called in for otherwise. And
right.
if people would bear with me for like a minute, I'd like to just read from Miriam Kava talking about police and abolition. And so it says, abolition challenges us to ask, why do we have no other well-resourced options? It pushes us to creatively consider how we can grow, build, and try other avenues to reduce harm. Repeated attempts to improve the sole option offered by the state, despite how consistently corrupt and injurious it has proven itself, will neither reduce nor address the harm that actually required the call. We need more and effective options for the greatest number of people. Let's begin our abolitionist journey not with the question, what do we have now and how can we make it better? Instead, let's ask, what can we imagine for ourselves and the world? If we do that, then the boundless possibilities of a more just world await us. So I think that just kind of captures the idea of, we call the police in these situations because we don't have anyone else to call, but really like an armed person with a gun isn't the right person to give a ride to your elderly grandmother to the hospital. And I think the situation of getting a loved one to the hospital following the death of a family member is really important because that, I mean, having gone through death of loved ones myself and you know, having not great reactions afterwards, like that is a point when having somebody that can be supportive and just listen and to get you to the place that you feel like you need to be in that moment, without having to worry about driving and being unsafe and like going through emotions to get yourself there, to just have somebody that you can rely on to get you there in that moment is really important and very powerful. So I do think that even if it doesn't seem, and maybe this doesn't need to be explained to you, but to be stated to town council, like these are the kinds of situations that people can take a really wrong turn in and it can become a disturbance. Or if you're given the correct support, it will avoid escalating to a situation where police might be involved because a person is being cared for in the moment in a way that's going to prevent some of the things that could potentially go wrong. So I do think that that's an important, like the examples, and I know we've talked about this a lot, whereas like the numbers don't say exactly what you've done necessarily, even though the numbers are looking like they're getting bigger and bigger. And I'm thinking about that in terms of like, you are just one shift of 3/4 of the team that you're supposed to be right now, right? Because you only have 5 responders. So if there were 8 responders, would those numbers be higher? And if you were 24 hours like originally envisioned, how high would those numbers be? Or if you were if you were operating during the hours that LEAP had identified as like the most impactful or like the most calls to police that should be diverted to Cress, what would those numbers actually look like? But we haven't been given the opportunity to answer that question because again, like Deborah said, I feel like there's been oh no, we're at the Bang Center, so we can only operate until 4. Oh no, we're only operating with 8 responders, now 6. So we haven't been nurtured in a way that can really let the program show its full capacity, its full capability.
And that's an important thing to know, that, it is, even though I think people expect that a new program, or I think that one of the things that is difficult is that as a totally new program, and if you look at alternatives to policing around the country, they all look different. So it all depends on what is your community's needs. So in Amherst, there are a lot, we have the amount of universities and colleges that we have in one small area. Then there's the amount of young people that are living in these homes. Then we also have, on the opposite side, a very aging community. So the question is like, what does diversion look like? And it looks different in different communities. And that's one of the things that Amherst has, it's very high and very low. We have very wealthy people, and at the same time, we have a good percentage of people who are living below the poverty line. But if you look at just the pure numbers that go out, people wouldn't think that. If you look at them, you think that Amherst is a very wealthy community. Well, yes, it is, but it also at parts is a poor community, and people don't want to talk about that. The people that have the need, or the people, or like the schools, and one of the things that we have dealt with, I know there was something in the paper about why wasn't Cress at an incident at the middle school. Well, one of the things that we talk about is that the I'm trying to think of the word we use, but one of the things that Cress does not go to is calls of violence and medical. So, and that call was both. There were people who were fighting, and then there was a medical emergency too. So those are both not Cress. Now, we have been called to the school, or had parents or part of the school call us to deal with students who they thought were going to fight, or who talked about they were going to fight. And we went there and mediated, and also met up with the bus to talk to the kids as they got off the school bus, and talk to the parents. So those are the type of things we can do, is restorative justice. We can mediate, and we can also be a voice. And I think that's the important part of Cress Connections, is getting in touch with these kids and being a voice for them, and being there to say, like morning mentoring, morning movement, to be there, to sit there and notice that like BIPOC youth are not targeted. So they know their rights. I mean, all these things that we've been working with DEI, know your rights, with the rec department to get to know these youth. These are all types of things that in the long run are diversion. They are diversion, because if you reach kids early, then they're not going to have to deal with the police.
Thank you. I just wanted to be clear. So you have right now 5 responders and 2 vacant positions.
Yes,
Okay,
one vacant position, one.
one.
Well,
But
one
you're-
because the other 2, they're freezing, right? Is that why?
Right.
Yeah,
They're
because
freezing the
remember,
two,
it's
they're
one
freezing the
because
2 responders, and we're losing the implementation manager.
yeah, so they have one, because they had 8, Erica, before. So
Right.
so now they have one vacant because the other 2 are being frozen, and they're losing the implementation manager because of the grant.
Right, so they have 1 vacant, which you're going to be allowed to replace?
Yes, we'll be able to fill that position.
Okay, so you'll have 6, but you have
Yes.
2 positions that you will not be able to hire for. And then
Yes,
you have your implementation coordinator who's grant funded, and the grant's going to end in July. And that,
yes.
okay, all right. I just wanted to be clear on that. All right.
Mhm.
Second question is, tomorrow, I think you said you're going to present at the finance committee?
Yes, I present at the budget review. So, I will be the last one that'll be presenting. So
So,
it's,
sorry, and that's a good question, Erica. So do you know what the itinerary is? Because obviously with me, I'm gonna try to, but of course it's really busy for me and stuff like that. Do you know what their agenda is? Like from 4 to
having gone through this only once last year, and again, I'd only come in less than 5 weeks before. It's to talk about your budget and also for the town council to ask questions of things that they feel are relevant. So like, I mean, I have a list of questions that were sent to me. So that is one of the things that I was working on, was having answers so that I can answer succinctly and not, you know. But I mean, things like
but I'm saying
same
like,
things that we've talked about today, like diversion and what is Crest's role, and you know, the amount of calls that have come to Crest instead of going to the police, that type.
no, but I was gonna ask, so do we get to do a public comment in the beginning or no?
Yes, there's public comment. Yes.
Okay, so there is, okay, thank you.
Okay, so another question, which I ask all the time, where are the protocols that allows dispatch to send you your calls? Because if that's still not in place, you can't be evaluated on something you have no control over.
So the implementation manager was working on our operating procedures, and at the macro level, those are done. But again, now that there will be no implementation manager, I don't have the time between everything else to be working on this. However, I will say this, the current superintendent supervisor of the Emergency Communication Center has been working with us twice a month on Fridays to go over these. And Jason has been 100% in support of Crest, and has been sending the calls and will call us if something comes through. So that's why the calls have gone up from the ECC, aka dispatch.
So when
So-
this is fully in place, you're going to need more responders to make sure you can respond to them. So don't forget so in looking at the presentation you provided today, you showed what you were doing. I think it should be really clear what the town's going to lose by you not getting those two positions filled and you losing the implementation coordinator. They need to understand what the town is going to lose by not having that in place. And once that dispatcher protocol is in place, the APD is going to be expecting that you respond. And if you don't have the capacity to respond, that's what you're going to be evaluated on. So you definitely need those positions in place. And then I just wanted to clarify one thing. I think what I understood in terms of the town manager, the town council had asked the town manager to provide a review by the end of June regarding Crest. I don't think he's using somebody from the outside. I think we maybe I have this wrong, but I know, because I was going to ask this under the youth center, youth empowerment center, that was where the Donahue Institute was going to do another review of what youth needed in order for them to then figure out the youth empowerment center. And that was like $50,000. And we've never heard anything about what was happening with that $50,000 and what Donahue Institute was supposed to be doing. So I just want to, we might be confusing it a little bit. So
I'm going to say,
But Erica, I'm not confusing it. I've heard
Okay.
from the community members, there's been rumors out there that they're going to use Donahue to review Crest. That's what I'm telling you. So I'm
Yeah.
not confusing things. This is,
Okay.
I'm just putting out there the rumors that are out there. Whether it comes out to be true or not, I don't know, but I don't trust it, right? I have to put it out there because I don't trust the town.
Right.
It's
Well,
sad
we
but
need
true.
somebody to come to our meeting so we can ask those questions and have those answered. So we're not, if it's true, then we need to answer, have answers why. And if it's not true, then, it could be dispelled by somebody coming here and meeting with us.
Yeah, but
And-
also, how is the town equipped or has the expertise to review Crest? the town doesn't have the expertise to review CREST. The town manager doesn't have the expertise to review CREST. I do think it's a good idea to bring in someone with expertise, like Leap, that we worked with before, who we actually trust, that have the knowledge base and the expertise, because they were actually a past law enforcement that has worked with alternative programs around the country. So they're an outfit that we trust. So there we go, you know?
I
Okay,
just
that was all.
wanted to say, when you asked about, oh, I was going to say, Erica, when you asked about the Donahue Institute and the youth empowerment, they did come back with the report on the what was available in the town and around the surrounding towns. Remember the map? So that did come out.
Thank you for the reminder.
Are there any other questions for Camille at this time?
Camille, I don't know if I've asked you this before, but do you have any Spanish speaking responders?
Present. The implementation manager does speak some Spanish, but she's going to be gone. No,
No?
not fully, not fully. There are some that speak some Spanish, but not fully.
Okay. And God forbid, you lose one of your employees or one of these responders. Are you going to be able to fill that position with the freeze?
Right now, we're going to be budgeted for 6 responders. So, and as far as the, we also have the Pocket Talks, which we have used. We just recently used with someone who spoke Mandarin. That was Monday. Sorry, today's Wednesday. I don't know what day it is. So that was Monday. We had an elder come in who speaks primarily Mandarin. So we were using the Pocket Talk. And then we also have, the town has a translation service.
Okay.
Can someone just send the link for tomorrow's budget meeting to our group, so that
I
then
can send it out to
share
you.
with- Yeah, so that then I can share with my networks to make sure to see if folks can attend tomorrow's budget meeting. Thank you.
So I think we can move on to the Rob. So first off, I just again wanted to express my deep, deep gratitude to Deborah and to Camille. I obviously joined in Deborah's place after Deborah recused herself, and I will say that my experience on the Rob committee was far different than Deborah's. And I would say that there was one variable that had changed besides me, and that was that the police representatives were no longer participating. And I think that there was some movement in the consensus of the group around what they would actually like to see in the resident oversight board. So we had our last meeting last Wednesday, at which point there are 3 separate versions of the document. And so what it is the bylaws. There's one version that is integrated, so it has like kind of choose your own adventure. So the, one is going to be the, most of the language is the same in both options, but then there are specific spots where it will have, if review board, then this would be the language. If investigatory board, then this would be the language. And then they did do that again, but separated out. So it was just the language for a review board and just the language for an investigatory board. And we did that in part because some people found it easier to read all in one document and some people liked having them separate. But because there was objection from the police and some of the community members about the idea of an investigatory board, the idea was to present the two options to town council. So my understanding is that they would have to take the documents as they're created now to the town attorney for review. And then once those have been reviewed, there would be a town council meeting in which my understanding is that Paul would present the information. So not the committee that came up with the bylaws, but Paul presenting to the town council. And again, this is conjecture at this point, but likely how it would go. And it would be helpful to get some clarification. Separately, the police department is doing its collective bargaining starting this summer to renegotiate their contract. So it's likely that this would have to be bargained. So that does give hopefully a little bit of impetus for Paul to get this on an agenda sooner as opposed to later so that it can be, well, one would think that it would be helpful to have that on the agenda sooner as opposed to later so it could be included in the collective bargaining. But again, it could always go the other way where it's stalled. So there's the bylaws that were drafted and then the charge and kind of an idea about rules and procedures, which would probably be ironed out more by the committee itself once it's seated. And the consultants do have, as part of their contract, some of the helping implement the actual board itself is my understanding, and coming up with some of the, putting together the training package and that kind of stuff. So their contract is supposed to be up by the end of this year, I believe, because the work was slated to be completed within a year. So again, that would be another reason for hopefully this to get on the agenda. I'm assuming it wouldn't get on before July because of all the budget stuff that goes on between now and July, but hopefully it will be on the agenda at some point over the summer. Again, the other decision point that was contested was whether or not there would be subpoena power, and the bylaws will present that again as another choice point. And there was some discussion around the subpoena power and whether that would be damaging to some of the potential witnesses in cases if you're subpoenaing a person in the community versus subpoenaing the police. What kinds of implications would that have for a community member, and whether that would be re-traumatizing. So that was part of the discussion that we had, as well as whether or not a police who is subpoenaed would just assert their Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, which again is afforded to everybody. So those were some of the points that were brought up in the defense of no subpoena power. But again, it was a majority of the participants in the live meeting that were in favor of the subpoena power being restored or being allowed in the bylaw. Again, the opposition is largely from the police, and there were also community members who expressed concern around that. So in terms, so the information is in the packet, the 3 separate options. And it sounds as if there would not be a separate public meeting to weigh in, but that it would be a specific public comment period within the meeting dedicated specifically to the Resident Oversight Board question. So again, it's something that we would need to know about when it's going on there and try and mobilize people to come to that. But the documents are as they will be presented to the town manager. And so those at this point are in the public domain because they're in our packet. So again, please feel free to share them with people. Again, they are not asking us specifically to provide feedback that they will accept and change any of those documents, but I think if we have ideas of what might be missing or, ways to advocate for the thing that would be the truest to the vision of Community Safety Working Group, I think that would be helpful to hear about. Deborah.
Well, first I want to thank you, Allegra, obviously for taking this on, coming in midway. I know my hat's off to you because I know it's not an easy task, especially given all of the, resistance, from the police. And again, like I said, I don't have any problem saying it. And really, trying to really at every point put a barriers to having the Resident Oversight Board put in place. But I guess I do have some questions in terms of clarity. So you said, and I understand that the police weren't at the meetings, but I thought that the chief was still kind of like providing feedback, right, on.
So he did provide written feedback, and that was, again, it came, the first meeting that I joined was, he had provided his written feedback already, and it was, again, the big issues of whether it was a review or investigatory body, and then whether there would be subpoena power. Those were really the only big, like, content discrepancies that there were that he commented on and did not have a shift.
Well, I just want to put it publicly, though, that at least, the police did have input in it afterwards and things like that. So we just want to make that clear, that they, even though they weren't at the table, because they recused themselves because they chose to do so, that be very clear that they chose to recuse themselves, but still there was some written input that was provided by the chief. We just want to make that clear so we know that. The other part is, so it's going to the attorney, the town attorney. So what does that mean? So does the town attorney get to change it, get to say before Paul or whomever is going to present it to the town council, does he get to say, okay, well, I changed this, that, the third, this is where I changed it from what the committee, the Resident Oversight Committee had proposed? Because I think that's going to be very important, right? To kind of see whether anything gets modified and where it gets modified and things like that. So do you know what that means in terms of it going to the town attorney and what's going to happen before it goes to the town council?
I mean, I imagine that it would be a review to make sure that, we're not wildly out of compliance with the law in terms of what can be done in a Resident Oversight Board.
I get that, but I mean, I
Yeah.
think what we want though, because I'm an attorney and Everald's an attorney, you can always, justify things all sorts of ways unless it's definitely illegal. And, obviously, I don't think anything that you all including here is definitely illegal, but you can always argue both sides of the fence all the time. So what I'm saying though is that we want to be clear that whatever this town attorney comes up with, that we have an opportunity to look at that, right? So that it's not just fluff stuff that comes up as to why certain things cannot, especially, well, for me, I want as an investigatory one to be put in place and things like that, especially to counter whatever the investigatory, power is. So all I'm saying is that we want to make sure that we review whatever this town attorney says is legal or not, or what have you.
And so I will reach out to Rabbi Deb and just kind of verify what, if it comes up with a lot of red pen, what next? Like, because then that kind of violates the work of the group.
And then two other points in terms of what you said. So, no public meeting. I remember when I was there, that was one of the things that we really had talked about is, so again, the town is trying to curtail the voice of the community, is trying to make sure that we don't have an opportunity to really provide feedback on this, because why isn't there going to be a public meeting, right? And that was one of the reasons why I ended up recusing myself from the group, because I felt like the group itself and the town wanted to make sure that the community did not have as much feedback and as much a knowledge base around what was happening around the resident oversight board. So it is really not acceptable that there won't be an opportunity to have, the consultants present to the community. Okay, this is what we did. This is what transpired, so that the community could have an opportunity to give feedback before it goes to the town council. That is an utter disrespect to the community. I'm sorry, to then say, oh, well, it's going to go to the town council, and then within the town council, you're going to have a few minutes to public comment on it. What is that? Again, I'm just pointing it out, the disrespect and the real kind of dismissiveness that the town has towards community voices. Because again, the resident oversight board is to make sure that these public safety services, the police and CREST, are serving the community, and that community can go, if they feel that there's something that's not working well, that they can go and actually have a place to vet their concerns. So why is it that you wouldn't allow the community to provide proper feedback to these drafts? And why is it that now you're getting this little whatever time period in a meeting, which we know that those meetings, who knows when and where and so on and so forth, you're going to be able to even speak and things like that, when they give you that little 3-minute clock, can only talk for 3 minutes and things like that. This is ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? It's again very dismissive and very silencing to the community for something that's so important, given what is going on in this country, given the move to oppression that this country is going down the path, even more so that the resident oversight is going to be important. So I don't know if you have anything to say in regards to that, but that is just not acceptable, that they're not they're not presenting this to the community and allowing the community to provide feedback, proper feedback.
Just that I agree with you.
And then the other one, I mean, these consultants, I won't kind of put my viewpoints in regards to the consultants that worked with the resident oversight board, but I'm kind of like not in line with them being the ones that are going to do the implementation and do all of those things. I thought that they were just going to be the ones to kind of create the help to draft this. But why is it that they're now going to be providing the training, going to be doing the implementation? Why is it that they're doing everything as opposed to finding other consultants that could be more apropos and have more of the expertise to actually do that work, especially in line with having a resident oversight board that actually has some power. Because again, if the town council goes down the path of having a review resident oversight board, is going to be a weak resident oversight board that really is not going to have a power to do anything. So, I mean, I'm just, because obviously I got to work with these consultants and everything, and I think that there should be a separation. They should only be there to help put those in place, but then there should be other consultants, another group to actually help implement.
I mean, I guess I didn't know that until this last meeting. That was discussed during kind of the timeline of when this would hopefully go in front of the council. But I guess that was part of the original contract, which I didn't even think about or know.
No, yeah, and I mean, they told us that too
Yeah.
during, when I was there, that that was gonna be happening, and I was just like, what? Why is that the case? Why is it that we're gonna still continue to have the same consultants to assist, you know, down the path? And I don't think that that's a good idea.
I guess my only answer to that would be if that was how the RFP was written, which I don't know if that's what it specified, but I guess the other flip side would be then it would be a whole nother RFP process that the town would probably have to go through to get a third set of consultants for this, the implementation phase.
Well, I mean, for me, it's just that I just think, because obviously I was a part of it and everything, that a lot of, a lot could have been avoided if certain things have been dealt differently by the consultants. That's why I don't have faith that they're going to be able to actually, you know, do a good job in terms of implementing what it is that we want implemented for the resident oversight board. So, because a lot of the implosion of what transpired that really ended up being on me to kind of like push things along, was because, you know, there was this whole thing of just like, oh, let's all just kumbaya together, not understanding that this is a very difficult topic that a lot of people have, you know, a lot of ideas around, right? Very specific ideas around and beliefs around because of different experiences that someone that looks like me is going to have than someone that looks like someone else, right? And so I think that these consultants really just kind of didn't take that into consideration, which led to some of the things that led, you know, in terms of me recusing, the police recusing, this and that, because not really understanding the culture of Amherst, thinking that Amherst, just because people call it the Happy Valley, it's indeed the Happy Valley. Yeah, it might be happy for some, but not for others, you know? And so that's why I'm just kind of like, you know, I don't know if that's the best use of our taxpayer money.
Mine's just a quick question. I looked on the ROB website, and in light of, you know, what Deborah's talking about in terms of transparency, and Allegra, you mentioned too, I don't see anything on there in terms of these options nor any timelines. So I think that's very sad. You know, not having one, you know, just talking about having the community have input, and two, not even having it on their website. So people can at least look on the website and see what's happening, what the timelines are, and what the next steps are, so they can be prepared.
Thank you for that comment, Erica. I hadn't looked at the website, but it's important feedback, and I can, again, reach out to the consultant and ask those two questions. One, if it could get on the website, and two, what is the process if there's a lot of redlining of the documents by the town attorney?
And lastly, like if the town manager doesn't move quickly so that, you know, the bylaws could be put in place, and this could be bargained, you know, within the union, because that was one of the kind of sticky points, then, you know, right there, it's going to be a problem. So it does have to, right? Any changes to the police do have to be bargained through the union, through, you know, the union bargaining, you know, time period. So this does need to be. So there should be a timeline, and the timeline should be very clear in terms of what's going to happen. And if there's no timeline so that this can be bargained with the police, then again, we already know the sabotage is in play.
Have any comments about the Resident Oversight Board before we move on? Youth Empowerment Center,
Yeah, youth
we don't have any,
empowerment.
there's no update. I mean,
No,
we've,
no updates. Paul hasn't, gotten back. No one has been, no representative has been sent from Youth Empowerment Center. As we all know, last time supposedly $50,000 was used by the Donahue to do a review. We never got any outcome of that. So $50,000, right? A big chunk of money, nothing. The rest of the money, which would be $450,000, went back to whatever free cash. Hasn't been allotted anywhere. I've asked to, for us to meet with the town council, ask Lynn various times, nothing, no response at this point. First, she said that she wasn't even gonna meet with us. And then this last time that I asked again, no response at all. And so, again, the only thing that I can think is that they're going to just use the money for other things, and not establish this youth empowerment center. Again, a slap in the face, and again, saying that our most vulnerable population, which again is our young people, right? Our young people who need a space, especially our BIPOC young people, that they don't matter.
Fence. So I guess move on to retreat planning since there's no update other than same old.
All right, so retreat planning, we have a date. It is Saturday, June 14th. We were going to be at the Bank Center. We have that reserved. And we agreed from 9 to 1 p.m. If we need less time, we'll end earlier. I think I need to check with Camille again if we actually have any funding for food, but Everald also said that he would be willing to also support this. So, planning on getting some refreshments. Unfortunately, Pat Rooney, who would have loved to facilitate this, is not available in June. And she did give me a name of someone else to contact, and I have contacted her. And she has gotten back to me that she is interested in having a conversation, but I followed up with trying to schedule a time and I have not gotten word back. So we may have a really great facilitator, or it may just be me facilitating us and having the conversation. And I think it would be important. Everald was very clear about one of the areas he's interested in having a conversation about. If anybody else has something that you want me to make sure is going to be covered, then let me know, because Pat and I did go over what we wanted to do, what we thought would be important to do. And there's plenty of opportunity to have conversations. But if there's something very specific, definitely let me know to make sure that we cover those before the end of the day. We may think that 9 to 1 is a lot of time, but it's going to go fast. Part of what we want to do is just get to know each other a little bit better, and then really get into taking a look at what we want to see as action plans that we can focus on and move forward with, and possibly even think about subcommittees. We're a small group, so subcommittees may be 2 people. And we're also hoping, I don't know if there's any movement on more members. It would be really great if we had more members before the retreat, because part of this is sort of level setting of all of us. There are those of you who have been on this committee for a very long time and have been really the backbone and really have made a lot of movement, even if it's just letting the town know that we're watching, we're hearing, we're acting, we're not going to let these things go. So for those who are new, which me is one of them, it's really great to have an opportunity to sit down and think about what we've done and where we want to go with this.
Thank you, Erica, for, taking the lead on this and obviously putting this together. I was wondering if, since we were going to have it a little while ago, but then obviously, it didn't end up working out the date, but if you could kind of send the agenda, the draft agenda out again, especially since there's so much going on, especially on the national scene and state and local, given the current atmosphere out there. maybe we might want to tweak the agenda, you know, so if you can send that out to us again, I'd appreciate it. And then for Camille, yeah, I mean, I don't even know why there's this issue about like not having money for food. I just don't get it, you know what I'm saying? Because also I was on the resident oversight board, there was always like money for food for that one, you know what I'm saying? So why is there money for food for that board, for that, not board, but group? And then we're a committee and there's like no money for us for food. Why do we
There-
have to rely on
There,
our own group for that?
no, actually, as I said before, yes, I can use, as it's part of, EAPS, I can use EAPS funding
Okay.
and
so
do
we-
a food and
then we
beverage
do have
request.
funding for food.
Mhm.
Okay, great. All right, excellent. So then that's Erica, if you can follow up with Camille and let's just get that done. And then in terms of the town manager and the new members, Allegra, when was the last time we've heard from him about the new members? Because we haven't heard from him
It's
at all.
been a while. I feel like there was a general like call for members for groups of all sorts, and I believe there
The
was
other day,
what?
the other day, it was posted about the positions open on committees.
Yeah.
Okay,
And so I think they'd originally put like, oh, please respond by like May 17th or May 24th or something like that. So my guess is that soon we would hear about scheduling interviews. I think the cycle generally is that people come off committees at the end of June. And I know that there are, you know, at least the Housing Trust has like 4 members vacant right now. So I think that will, you know, what they tend to do is like fill, you know, prioritize committees where there wouldn't be a quorum, which as of right now, we're like just sneaking by. But I will follow up. Let me write down all my tasks. Follow up with Paul.
yeah, because, you know, like you said, at least we have quorum right now. So like you said, they might give a more priority to those that don't, which makes sense, right? Those that don't have quorum should be the ones that have more priority. But since we are planning a retreat, if we were able to get some new members prior to the retreat, that would be perfect so that we could also fold in the new members, the newest members, because we know Erica's still a new member, but the newest members into the retreat. And then Erica, whatever you could do to talk to the other person that you're trying to talk about facilitating, would be great, because, you know, it would be better for, you know, you to be part of the conversation as opposed to having to facilitate. And then I think that maybe what we could do to kind of like put some pressure off of you so you don't have to facilitate the whole time is just maybe each of us members can facilitate a section. You know, I don't think it should all be like on you and things like that. We could each take on an agenda item, whichever agenda item we think is, you know, we're more passionate about, and then we facilitate it, you know, so that then it doesn't have to be all on you.
Thanks, Deborah. I think that's a great idea. But I am hoping, because this person really comes well recommended, so I'm hoping that
Yeah.
this person will do it. So
Yeah,
thanks.
hopefully.
It's related to the retreat. Yes, Erica.
Sorry, I wanted to see if any participants had a question. Instead, I put my hand up.
Have meeting with town council and then public comment. It is 8:46.
Well, meetings with the town council, like I said, we no updates. Lynn has at this point just ignored my last communication with her when I contacted her about. I do know that our liaison was going to outreach to you know, town council members and Lynn and so on, but I haven't heard back from our liaison, our town council liaison. So hopefully we'll hear from her in regards to that too. But I mean, at this point, I don't know if we just want to send something to them, especially around the Youth Empowerment Center, because we need to ask them to earmark that money, you know, for the Youth Empowerment Center, because I think the longer we wait, because I thought we were at least gonna get on the agenda, you know, get on an agenda. I didn't think it was gonna be an issue of them ignoring us, which is the other disrespect for them to ignore a town committee, especially a town committee dealing with, you know, social justice and equity and inclusion in the town. But again, that's just me. But yeah, I think we should just send something, just, you need to earmark it, you know, you need to earmark that money, because I'm really afraid that they're going to take that money. That's really what's gonna happen, especially during the times that we're living in. And obviously with the town ignoring us, I just feel that they're following suit in terms of the national atmosphere and the ways that the nation has been going. I think the town of Amherst is following suit, or trying to follow suit down the same path.
That's a good idea, Erica.
Well, I think a big question is, do people understand what equity means? And if one, they do, and they're not willing to support it, take it out. Take it out of the mission statement or any of the definitions, because this is the time where you step up to the plate around equity. And we're not talking about equality, we're talking about equity. And when you think about, you know, the reparations committee, when you think about, you know, all the things that you've said, Deborah and Everald, in terms of very vulnerable populations, and you too, Allegra, in terms of the very, very vulnerable populations that exist in this town, you know, we can be an example to other towns. And actually, I'm looking at Hadley, and they're doing some pretty interesting things as well. And equity means that sometimes people who have a lot or have more step back, and those who don't, that's when you put those resources to those who need the most, the marginalized, the most vulnerable, and the people who have been historically and currently disenfranchised. So if that's not what that means, or that's not what we stand for, then take it out. Please just take it out, because it's just frustrating, and it's disheartening, and it's hurtful to feel that, you know, there's a statement that talks about equity, but people don't stand behind it. It's really meaningless.
Thank you, Erica.
Shall we move on to public comment? All right, if you are, oh, no, I keep on raising my own hand. That's not what I'm trying to do. If you are in the public and you want to make public comment, please raise your hand and we will bring you into the room.
Thank you, Madasi. Obrigado, Asante Sana, for all that you all do. I just wanted to chime in relative to the connection with the reparations work. The group that I was a part of for the town of Amherst, the African Heritage Reparations Assembly, one of the aspects of our report is has been discussed and is being acted upon. We're just going back and forth in some of the language of the charge. And one aspect of the language concerned the membership, how we had originally suggested just a small, nimble 5-member group. One counselor, when they saw that, thought it should be expanded, thought it should have certain designated roles, such as someone from CSSJC, someone from the recreation department, someone from, I don't know, she raised a couple of, a few different things. We sort of pushed back on that idea, saying that, reparations and the report we made recommended some things that may dovetail with things that the rec department, or dovetails with CSSJC or Human Rights Commission or whatever, but we didn't see burdening like in order for that is part of the membership of the committee, we'd have to have these individuals or someone, that's extra work. That's extra work on that member of these related units of the town or related committees or commissions. And we just didn't see that when the actual item that might be relevant for that group, we can just meet with them when it comes around to that. Okay. And the other thing I just would add is CSSJC, the recommendations, these are things that for the benefit of all the town. Okay. Whereas reparations is really focused on the specific descendants community and the larger Black community. Whereas the work of CRESS or the work of DEI office or the work of a resident oversight board, those are things that will benefit and bring about harm reduction. Yes, for members of the Black community, descendants of the enslaved community, yes, but it is also benefits everybody in the town and is designed to benefit all people of the town. Anybody within a mental health crisis, doesn't matter the color, okay? It might matter the color, but the programs are set up to benefit all members. And the same with the Resident Oversight Board. That's a place for anybody that's has a complaint to be heard and to. So anyway, I just want to say that while we feel many of the recommendations you have made are things that are good and supportive for the entire community, it is not to be lumped in as, oh, we're doing reparations when we do CRESS, or we're doing reparations when we create a resident oversight board. That doesn't fit our definition. That doesn't fit our criterion and the report we worked on over 2 years to produce. So I just wanted to make you all know that we are out there trying to clarify, trying to make sure community members and especially counselors are aware of the differences and understand that in the future implementation body that we hope will be created soon, that we hope there are areas where we can work in a mutually beneficial way with various town commissions and committees and units, but the work of our group is really laser focused on the particular community that was harmed by slavery and creating a system of redress and restitution for that specific community. It's not about a race. It's not about anything like that. It's about a specific community of harm that we're trying to address as a town, related to the wider anti-racism systemic efforts, but it's different. So thank you. Just wanted to add that into the mix.
Thank you.
Good evening. Can people hear me?
Yes, we can.
Pat Ananibako. So first of all, I want to thank all of you for your time on the committee. I want to start by stating that I'm very concerned about the morale of the CRESS staff and the fact that our town government can't see the value, the benefit of CRESS is really disturbing. So I hear a lot about numbers being thrown tonight, 6, 8, whatever. But the original recommendation by CSWG, which I was a member, was actually double that amount. And so unfortunately, I won't be available tomorrow. But I think the finance committee, the community need to be reminded again that the original recommendation was, I believe, 15 staff for CRESS to include evening shifts, overnight shift. So I also want to comment on what is happening on national level. I feel that it mirrored what is happening locally with our town government. The only difference is that town government is just pretending, because with our local government, they're pretending like they support equity, they support social justice, but history has shown us when it comes to certain projects, like Chris we're talking about right now, the youth center, the bicultural center that CSWG recommended, how the APA funds was funded, reparation that Dr. Shabazz just talked about, is stalled. It's stalled. And there are certain code words that is being used, being reevaluated. When I hear that, as a businesswoman, it's a way to just, push it, on the corner, as a way to give excuse that, we're all for equity, we want to do it, but we want to reevaluate. So those are code words. For me also, I like to watch where the money goes. I think we should remind ourselves that we are all taxpayers, and who are benefiting most from the tax dollars, who gets to keep their job in this town, what type of projects are benefiting our residents. And I don't want to prolong my brief public comment, but money is everything. It's king. And the people in power make that decision. This is a local election year. Unfortunately, sometimes the folks most impacted by discrimination don't go to vote, and that frustrates me. We do have a local political action, PCA, Progressive Coalition of Amherst, that resident can, support, rally people. We have a lot of issues that people can raise this year. The budget thing, to get people to go and run for offices. I feel it's possible. If a black woman from Africa can run a very successful company, I think it's possible for us to change the makeup of our town council. That's where we can get any solution or get any progress forward. Without having elected officials that represent marginalized group in this town, we'll be talking the same thing year after year after year, unfortunately. I also want to talk very briefly about Donahoe Institute. Beside that, it is a white-led organization. I don't want to mention name, but that organization is also in cahoots with some of our elected officials. So they put out report that town council leadership wants to hear, tells them to do. So to me, it's all waste of tax dollars money when it should go to proper use. In terms of, so I also want to thank Allegra, Deborah, Camille, and everyone who served on Rob, and Allegra, thank you for the updates. To have multiple reports, just tell me, it says a lot about this town. I don't see the reason why we can't have like one report, the real thing. But that's a mess we're dealing with, is the power people, that run this show in this town, unfortunately. I will say right now, I do not have faith on the reports. I just want to put that out. And finally, I just want to announce that my organization, my group, Black Business Association of Amherst Area, will be sponsoring our signature event, Juneteenth, on June 19th at St. Bridget's Church from 6 p.m. It's free to the public. That will be, it'll be fun. this is the first time we're moving it to inside. It used to be outdoor, but this year we're doing it inside. And I just want to really shout out and acknowledge, a few families that started the Juneteenth celebration here, the Shabazz family, the Cage family. People will kill me, but, a couple more. About, more than 10 years ago. And so, for BBAA, we, it's our signature event. What else did I want to say? So that, that just it. I hope people will show up tomorrow and advocate for CRES. And good night. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Pratt.
Yeah.
Martha Hanner again. Thank you all for all your thoughtful things for this meeting, and for the two speakers who just spoke too, for your thoughtful comments. I mean, you have a lot of issues on your plate. At the moment, I've got my one-track mind. I'll stick with CRES for the moment, but I would like to urge you then, Deborah, you've made up a very good suggestion of using LEAP for the study. I would like to suggest that you folks write a official memo or do something official right soon and send it to relevant people to suggest that using LEAP and why this should be done, because it sure makes sense. I hadn't thought of it, but it really would be very logical to do. And I think we need to publicize it real soon in order to affect that. Yeah. And for CRES, I do agree with Everald's concerns. I'll be a little more charitable. I would say that for a lot of people, some of the council members or others in the community, it's just they don't really understand CRES's mission and what they've done. It's really a matter of how do we define safety? If you're taking a person that is confused and distressed and helping to transport them to a safe place, doesn't that count as safety? So I think that that's a discussion that's going to have to go on, over the next months and so on, is really to, support CRES in the bigger sense. But tomorrow, the biggest concern is really trying to, the funding. And what I had suggested, and unfortunately it's too late for our friend Kat, but I had suggested, and a couple of the Finance Committee members had thought that sounded interesting, was just, couldn't they come up with bridge funding for the implementation manager from some source, extra cash or whatever, with the anticipation that it would be possible to get some other kind of a future grant. And so it would be something, quote, temporary. It wouldn't have to be a permanent position, but there should be creative ways to get funding for what's basically needed here. Anyhow, the best we can do is just to try now to give specific examples of how CRES is helping people, I think, and make our council members think of the individual situations of where CRES is really making a difference. So that's the first step, and then we'll move on to see if we can make sure we get some public input from everyone, both about the CRES evaluation and then about the ROB. So good luck, and thank you all for all your work.
Thank you, Martha.
Mhm.
And there are hands at this time. So let me just look at the calendar. Our next meeting would be Wednesday, June 11th at 6:30. So that would be a few days before our retreat. And normal time. And I will do the same thing, ask for agenda items the week before so things can get posted on time. And other than that, I suppose we can say goodnight. It is 9:07 and this meeting is adjourned. Unless anyone has anything else to say. No, okay. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Good night.
night.
Thank you very much.
Night.
Good night.